Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 8th July 2023. Sorry, 7th July 2023, not 8th July. 7th July 2023. My name is T.S.V. Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Haribol TRSV Nectar NECTAR Nectar. In this particular vlog, in all my previous videos, we have been discussing about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in the vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of what we have been doing in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my other videos. So today, let us continue with the topic of today for this video. Yesterday we talked about the first of the four elements that are the main constituents of the gross body of a human living entity. Before continuing, let us have a quick recap. There are five basic elements that the material world uses to wrap around the spirit soul that comes in touch with it. When it does so, the same spirit soul becomes what is known as a living entity. Of these five elements, the first one is known as ether. As mentioned before, let us set this particular element aside for the time being. We will discuss in detail about ether in some other video. This ether, incidentally, is responsible to create the three subtle layers of the body of the material world. These are causal intelligence, astral mind of feelings and emotions, and etheric senses. Let us discuss about this later on. Then come the other four elements. Of the four elements, the first one called air is directly connected to this ether because it emanates out of ether. When this air comes in picture in the gross body of a human living entity or any other living entity, the next element, that is the second element called fire, emanates out of air. It is this fire that we will discuss in detail about in this particular video. The third, water, emanates out of air, and the fourth, earth, emanates out of this third, water. We will discuss about water and earth in our later videos. Today we will talk about the second element called fire. Before proceeding, I may remind you that air and fire can be felt by a living entity. They may know about the existence of these two elements in his or her gross body, but yet these two are not visible to the naked eye. The other two, that is, water and earth, are both not only felt but also visible to the naked eye of a living entity. Now, this fire, why it is not visible? Air we can understand. It is directly gross out of subtle, and hence it may be invisible to the naked eye. But this fire, which is only the second element, is not visible to the naked eye because it can be felt, but it is latent. Fire can be visible outside the gross body of a living entity. We have seen fire outside in the society or in the atmosphere in various shapes and sizes. But the same fire, when it is inside the body of a living entity, it is not like what it was outside in the society. It is latent and hence invisible. It is extremely powerful, but it cannot be seen outside, so that it has to be controlled by the living entity or by the doctors from distance, from a distance, or through other methods. This fire, which is latent, is mainly used to digest the food ingested by the living entity. In other words, this fire basically exists in the belly of the living entity, where it, through enzymes and other forms of energies, digests the ingested food of the living entity. This is precisely the reason why there is a term called fire in the belly. Actually, this term is used to show how energetic a human or any other living entity is, but it is said to be in the stomach because it is mainly used to digest the food and drinks which this living entity has ingested and breaking them into carbohydrates, vitamins, and other such ingredients and sources of energy and distributed through veins into the whole body of the living entity. The better the digestion of the food, the better is the overall health of the living entity. Any disturbance in digestion creates physical ailments to that living entity. The more the capacity to digest food, the better will be the health and strength of the living entity. Now, in the infancy, the living entity is not so powerful, so it is given only that food which can be easily digested. This particular method is used to make the body acclimatize to the food from the material world. Please remember that an infant is a newborn which has come from the ether. So it needs some acclimatization to adjust to the material world. This digestion capacity of the living entity increases with the age of the living entity. It improves from infancy to babyhood, then to childhood, then adulthood, then middle age, and slowly gets deteriorating after being neutral at the middle age. As a middle age, the living entity who is in the middle age is able to enjoy the prime of his or her digestive capacity. After middle age, when the person starts getting old, the same digestive capacity begins deteriorating sooner or later for that living entity. That is precisely the reason why the energy of old people is not as much as it was in their own body when they were as adults, teenagers, or middle aged people. This we must remember before we proceed further. This latent heat is also increased by the heat in the food and beverages consumed by that living entity. Every food item and a beverage item has some amount of fire in it. This helps in the digestion of the food of that living entity, along with the already existing latent fire in his or her body. There are some food items which have more fire than the others. As for example, meat, alcohol, drugs, spices, etc. There are other food items which may be very tasty or very palatable, but they are bland or sweet, as a result of which they lack the fire that is already existing in the previous food items like meat, spices, alcohol, drugs, etc. Excess of everything is bad. If a particular living entity ingests more than it is required just because of his or her taste for a particular food or beverage. The fire in that particular food item can have an adverse effect on the gross body of the living entity. As for example, there is latent fire already existing in the anatomy of every male or female living entity. However, because of the taste of the tongue or due to some other circumstances, if the same person consumes several such food items which have a lot of heat, then there is an overdose of heat in the body. Heat as such is an energy which is not very sensitive. It does not know what it is digesting. If this heat does not have enough food to be digested, it will start digesting the flesh of the gross body of the living entity. This is the reason why there are such maladies as stomach ulcers, cancer, and other ailments. Excess consumption of spices may also result in breathing problems and imbalance in the air of the particular living entity. Whatever it is, fire is one of the main sources of problems in the health of a living entity. Air, as we discussed in the yesterday's video, has its own importance, but it is fire which is directly responsible for the distribution of broke up ingredients of food ingested. These ingredients may be protein, vitamin, carbohydrates, enzymes, etc. If this distribution of energy in these forms is neutral, the body is healthy. However, if there is an imbalance in such distribution, it will create problems to the living entity. Fire, the second one, is also the origin of the third element called water, which we will discuss in my next video. However, we must remember that we must regulate fire just like we regulate air. Yoga and other forms of exercises, sports, athletics, etc., are helpful in burning excess heat and energy in the body of a living entity. No body needs too much of latent heat or uncontrolled air. In fact, uncontrolled air may be a result of uncontrolled fire and vice versa. Fire may influence air and air may influence fire when it comes to the metabolism and health of a human living entity's gross body. It is indeed a fact that all this happens because of the vibrations from the subtle body of the living entity, which are transmitted to the gross body through the brain tissue of every human living entity. However, it must be remembered that it is entirely the individual choice of every living entity to listen to the vibrations from the three subtle bodies. As I had mentioned in one of my previous videos, almost 75% of human living entities prefer to listen to and act according to the vibrations from the etheric senses. They would like to listen to and adhere to the demands of the senses of that particular living entity. Hence, there could be an imbalance in fire, air, water, earth, etc. This results in addiction to alcohol, drugs, etc., which may be tasty to the person and his or her tongue and senses, but it is detrimental to the health of that particular human living entity. Hence, if this person listens more to his or her senses, it will directly or indirectly affect this person's health, anatomy, strength, etc. We must remember this, and for this we have yoga, meditation, exercises, sports, hobbies, cerebral sports, etc., which burn up a lot of energy or excess energy in the body of a living entity. Here we must remember that mental and cerebral exercise does not burn up the immediate energy of a living entity as much as it does when the same person acts physically, as in sports, athletics, bodybuilding, etc. However, though the energy may remain the same, the nerves of a person who uses his or her cerebral faculties may go taut, as a result of which the thoughts of that person may directly or indirectly affect the metabolism, health, and strength of his or her body. There are several people who may not do much exercise but who use their brain to full capacity, as a result of which they may in fact achieve more in the long run than those who have been using their physical strength and health in athletics and other such sports. Their energy may be easily sapped, or rejuvenated, but it is not necessary that they will be successful in the long run, because as a person reaches middle age or old age, his or her physical capacity decreases. At that time, he or she has no other goal but to use his or her mental faculties. If the same person had been doing this right from his or her young age, he or she is more acclimatized to using his or her cerebral faculties. In such a case, he or she has conserved more energy in the form of fire than a person who had been physical in his or her efforts during his or her younger days. It could be that those people, that is the latter ones, who used their physical faculties may have looked or may be still looking more attractive to the naked eye of the society. But the fact remains that though they may look good outside, they may not be so good health wise from inside. There are several cases where the fire in the belly of a living entity has adversely affected his or her gross body, yet this thing could have been hidden from the naked eye of the society. That is precisely the reason why this fire in the belly has to be religiously controlled, regulated, and monitored to have the best results in the lifetime of a living entity. We are all aiming at the ultimate goal of reaching Godhead. For that, we must maintain our health of the gross body in such a way that we are able to achieve our goal in a lifetime as fast as possible. Self realization, liberation from repeated births and deaths, and final deliverance to the Supreme Personality of Godhead are the main aims of every human living entity. We must never forget this while pursuing our tastes, preferences, hobbies, thoughts, ideas, opinions, creativity, etc. We must never be distracted from the bull's eye. Hence, we should take care to regulate the air in our body plus the fire in the body to get the maximum positive results. Kindly let me know what you think of my talk on this particular matter. Please give me your own expert thoughts, ideas, opinions, and views so that I may blend everything for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video. It is Good Morning from TSV Raghavan.